Hey everyone. So over the next 2 to 2.5 years, the rare cannabinoid industry is supposed to grow to $15 billion and another $115 billion in the next 10 years. Needless to say, Big Pharma is listening. So what companies are poised to be industry leaders? We break it all down in our latest podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to the Dales Report, and happy to be joined here on the podcast here today, the president and CEO back to the podcast from InMed Pharmaceuticals, Eric Adams. Eric, long time, but great to have you back on. How are things?
Things are great, Shad. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah. How's the last few months been for you? Just busy times, I would think?
Yeah, incredibly busy. We've got a lot going on all fronts, both on the pharmaceutical side at InMed, as well as the health and wellness space with BayMedica.
Yeah.
Just firing on all cylinders and, trying to keep things pointed in the right direction.
So how many months has it been now since the BayMedica acquisition? It's been 4 months, and that's going well, I assume?
More than that. It's since October of last year, so hitting the 6-month anniversary here. It's been the integration's been great. We've got everyone pulling on the oars in the same direction. We've got, a tremendous group of individuals that joined us from BayMedica. We're getting the R&D streamlined. We're launching cannabinoids into the health and wellness space.
Yes.
So, despite all the other things that are going on in the world, I think we're on a good trajectory and we're making great progress.
That's great. Well, I want to begin with scaling. There's been a few key developments with commercial launches, patents, but before we get into some of the specifics, and more important for people to understand this, can you, remind my audience what problems you are solving for industry by synthesizing rare cannabinoids at scale?
Yeah, so, the cannabinoid class of compounds has tremendous interaction with the human body. Everyone knows about THC and CBD. Those are the major cannabinoids, and you see those all over the place. But there's 140 other individual chemicals that belong to this class called cannabinoids that we're investigating.
Wow.
And these are located, you can find them in the plant, but they're in such small amounts, it's really hard to extract them economically. So what we want to do is try to work on the ones that we think have real potential, both from a pharmaceutical drug development side as well as in the health and wellness space potentially, and manufacture those in a large commercial setting, and to do that at a price that's reasonable. And just to give you an example, you go back a couple of years, some of these rare cannabinoids were $100,000 per kilogram. Now we're looking at sub 20,000, sub 10,000, some of them sub 5,000 per kilogram from a manufacturing perspective. So what we're doing is we're just opening the possibility of people looking at these in different ways, being able to investigate those for different products and hopefully bring benefit to individuals.
How do you determine, when you're extracting, what cannabinoids are important versus others? But what's the thought process behind preparing for something like that?
Yeah, so we don't do any extraction. So extraction would be, using the plant. And as a company, we don't touch the plant. We don't grow the plant. We don't deal with anything that has to do with the plant. So it's all modern manufacturing techniques. So I just want to make sure we got that straight. You could look at the different structures of these compounds. You can do your own preclinical testing. You can look for how these individual compounds bind differently to certain receptors in the body.
Yeah.
So for instance, if this receptor is responsible for, let's say, pain,
right?
How do these bind together? Well, it turns out THC binds really well and has an impact on pain, but we don't want to deal with THC because of all the obvious reasons. What about something else? What about one of these other ones that may have some structural similarities to THC, but doesn't get you high? Well, that could be really interesting. So now we run a panel of those and we see which ones bind the same way that THC does to the certain receptor. So that's some preclinical stuff. Some companies have even gone so far as to do clinical trial investigations of these, in particular CBDV and THCV. So they've demonstrated that there are some real benefits there that should be paid attention to. So it's a scientific process, and we've got a number of different approaches to making that determination.
Well, let's get into some of those approaches and company specifics. Based on you scaling, synthesizing rare cannabinoids, the last time we spoke, building out your product portfolio was key in 2022. You launched CBT in January, And last week you launched CBDV, and THCV is coming soon. So let's focus on CBDV first, followed by THCV. So what exactly are the importance of these products? And most importantly, what are they used for?
Yeah, so we don't try to give people direction in terms of how to use these. So we manufacture them and we turn them over to people who formulate them at certain dose levels and then sell them in the health and wellness community. But what we've seen from CBDV is that it is, in some ways a turbo CBD. It seems to have some very interesting effects. It was investigated in clinical trials by another company in autism spectrum disorder. Which kind of follows in line with the way CBD has shown efficacy in epilepsy. So there's something going on there, and with the interaction with the brain. So we think that's pretty interesting, and I think that's really where a lot of the interest is coming from. Is people want to explore the uses of it in that manner. THCV is a little bit different. So it shares the same initials as THC. So people think, oh my gosh, it must be intoxicating. Well, it turns out it has almost the inverse effect of what THC does. So THC,
How so?
well, it's a little bit of a difference in the chemical structure, and it completely changes the way and where it binds in the human body. So THC, as people know, gives you this foggy, euphoric effect. It gives you the munchies. It does all these things. THCV has been demonstrated to increase your mental acuity, not to fog your brain. It gives you more energy, and again, these are from reports that we've read, not from our own data, and it suppresses your appetite. So it's completely the inverse of THC, and it's interesting the way these molecules, with just the slightest variation in their structure, can completely change their physiological impact in the body.
Well, the reports and data don't lie. THCV is getting a lot of hype recently. Would you think it's, I guess, the next big trend, the next big thing coming up within the industry?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of data to go on just yet. I think we're going to be the first people to launch this at meaningful commercial scale. But all the input and feedback we've gotten from our existing customer bases is that it's in high demand. They are very excited about it. But again, they've not been able to access it at a meaningful or a reasonable cost, and therefore they've not committed to building out a product portfolio that includes it. Well, hopefully we can change that. Hopefully we can bring it in at a price point that convinces people, number one, you're going to have a long-term, safe, reliable supply of this. You're going to get the highly pure version, which is Delta 9 THCV. We're not, we're going to take out and make sure there's no Delta 8 in it. We're also going to make sure there's no THC in it. I mean, these chemicals are so similar. If you extract it from the plant, you're never going to get rid of the THC. It's always going to be there because they're so similar. You can't separate them out through any processes. You probably can, but then you're back up to $50,000 per kilogram in order to do that. So synthesizing it, using chemical synthesis or biosynthesis is going to be much more effective. It's going to reduce the THC content to 0.00. It's not going to be in there. And you can specify that you're selecting for the Delta 9 version, which is the better version of THCV.
Do we have an idea yet as to how big this market could be related to THCV?
Well, people try to say, well, compared to CBC, which is another one that we make at commercial scale, how many multiples of CBC is it going to be? Well, you can't even begin to think that way. This is the only reasonable comparison is to look at what happened to CBD. Okay. How that came out of nowhere and is now multi-billion-dollar industry. Yeah. I think that's the potential that we're looking at for THCV. I think we can play an important part as a manufacturer and supplier to people who formulate different compounds or different products. But the proof is going to be in the pudding. I can't stand here and tell you, what the revenues are going to be because it's such a nascent market. It's just getting off the ground. But all indications are it's going to be impressively large.
How do you remain a leader within the space? Because, like you said, it's a big market. Big Pharma has already entered in. They're obviously going to increase their position as this industry expands. When you look at the pure efficacy of what's being produced from a cost perspective over the last couple of years, we definitely are into the next stage of what the cannabinoid industry is overall. But When you look at this overall, like, where do you think we sit right now? And most important, like I said, how do you remain a leader in the space?
Well, there's a couple of things that we intend to do to remain leaders. Number one is we want to be the go-to source for information. So if people want to understand what these compounds will or will not do, we hope that they can reliably depend on us to help them understand the potential of these products.
Right.
So it's going to be a big customer, information supply, if you will. We've kind of gone through all of the publications, scientific publications on THCV. We've sorted out the ones that we thought weren't that reputable. We focused on the ones that we thought were very well conducted studies. And those are the ones that we want people to read and kind of understand as they try to select where to and how to use these products. So number one, we want to be reliable scientifically. Number two, we want to continue to innovate on the manufacturing side in order to be the low-cost manufacturer at commercial scale. And by being the low-cost manufacturer, by supplying a product of very high purity, by supplying a product that is free of all THC, and making sure that it is the version that is going to be more active, which is the Delta 9 versus the Delta 8. Again, we want to be looked upon as the reliable source. You can go to other people and you can get THCV that's extracted from the plant. It's going to have impurities all the way through it, and we think it's important to have the pure form.
You touched on Delta 9 and Delta 8, which is part of your THCV cannabinoid portfolio. What's exactly is the difference between the two?
Again, it's a very, very slight modification of the chemical structure. And in this case, it's the specific site of a double bond between two carbon atoms. In Delta 8, it's on the left-hand side. Delta 9, it moves over to the right-hand side. It's literally just a one carbon change for this bond. But we've seen, and talk to anyone who's in the industry on the THC side of things, it has a huge effect. Delta 9 is way more potent than Delta 8. Right. So again, we think it's important.
Fascinating, isn't it?
It's unbelievable. And I'm a chemist by training, and it just blows me away
that small and
how
the
these
effect
things.
It has.
It's crazy. And the difference between THC and THCV is the reduction of one side chain, reducing it by 2 carbons. So instead of 5 carbons, it's 3 carbons. Completely opposite effect in the human body. Right.
Wow.
So it's exceptionally interesting, and again, it just goes to the fact that you really have to nail down your purity on these things to make sure you're getting the effect that you want.
One thing I found, I was in Benzenga in Miami a couple weeks ago, and I could not believe the amount of excitement. We're at 52-week lows, but however, the overall industry from where it was 3-4 years ago to where it is now, there is still a lot of huge optimism and upside for the companies that are building the proper foundation. Do you not believe that the times that we're going in through right now and the companies that are surviving getting through this are making the opportunity long-term even that much more lucrative for, I don't want to just focus on investors, obviously consumers as well, but what are you hearing and seeing? Because from what I experienced, it's just like you'd never know. We're at 52-week lows for the overall space because a lot of the companies that are still around that look at the potential, there's huge upside if done the right way, and that takes time, where I think a lot of investors just have unrealistic expectations in how they entered this space from an investment point from the top, don't you think?
We'll typically tell you how successful we've been after we've been successful. We can point to why we're excited about why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
People should have confidence. When we say that we think we're in the right direction, we're going to be able to get there. And you look at something like our human clinical trials in EB. It's taken a long time to get to where we are, and now we're executing on that. We're enrolling patients. We're treating patients with a incredibly severe disease with rare cannabinoids, and we'll see how the data comes out. But it's been a long road, but we've tried to stay true to our conviction, which is, we're not going to be, pumping the company for no reason. We're going to do the right things. We're going to put the foundations in place, and we're going to execute. And we continue to do that.
And I think that's the biggest difference, obviously, in the space right now, is the companies that I guess kind of promised but weren't realistic promises in the early days are no longer around, and you're seeing that obviously everywhere in the space. I want to move over to your research and development side of your business. Scientists at your subsidiary BayMedica were pleased to announce last week the publication of a patent application in North America for several cannabinoid analogs, with the application described as several new cannabinoid-related chemical compounds that have not been previously been described. So first off, to explain to my viewers, what exactly is an analog and the importance of it all?
Sure. So an analog is a compound where you make a slight modification from, let's call it the parent compound, in order to improve its performance.
Okay.
So you can make these modifications to improve its efficacy in some kind of outcome. You can change it to improve its safety. You can maybe accomplish both of those things. Maybe you can alter it in order to come up with a different formulation, a different way of delivering it to the body. So what we've done, or what the guys at BayMedica have done, is looked at the natural structures of cannabinoids and said, from a pharmaceutical standpoint, how can you improve upon these? What can you do in order to bring more benefit? So they started to make a number of different alterations, attaching, taking off this side chain and putting something else on there, doing a different modifications. And this has led to a library that can be thousands of new molecules, what we call new chemical entities. So why is that important? Well, number one, the outcome may be better by using these versus the naturally occurring ones. But number two, we're going to own the patents on these.
Right.
So as we look at new pharmaceutical applications, we're going to continue to investigate new diseases. We're going to invest all this time, energy, money over a long period of time, but we're going to have the guarantee that when we get there, there's not going to be generics in the market, as is the case with the naturally occurring cannabinoids. So, we have commercial protection downstream that helps justify the investment along the way, and strengthens our ability to, form partnerships, to talk with other companies who may want to go through our library to find something for a different disease that maybe we're not pursuing ourselves.
Wanted to ask, as we translate all this information and put it together, and that's something I have asked you in the past, what is the general consensus of Big Pharma right now related to this industry? How much attention and how much progress is being made with the conversations that you experience on a day in and day out basis with them?
Yeah, well, I can't really point to any specific ongoing discussions. We'll tell you what we did after we did it in that instance. But I think in general, the taboo is gone. Certainly that took some time. People recognize these as non-intoxicating, naturally occurring compounds that have significant physiological impact in the human body. There's no question of that. I think people want to see that they're being applied in areas that is very appropriate and that you can deliver it in a way that will really affect the disease. And if you have a patent, that just helps things as well. So we have a number of patents on CBN in terms of formulating and using it specifically for certain outcomes, but we don't own the molecule, right? It occurs in nature, and you can't own that molecule. Nevertheless, we've had a lot of really interesting conversations, especially for glaucoma, because the data there is so strong. What we've been able to demonstrate in our preclinical modeling has been so impressive, and in particular, the neuroprotective component of that, which we have patented. So using CBN to impact neuroprotection is a patent that we've filed. So I think people are opening up to this. I think you've seen things. I believe Tilray did a deal with I think it was Novartis, one of the Swiss companies. And that's more on the cannabis side of things, but certainly on the cannabinoids and the rare cannabinoids, interest is growing and continues to grow. And it's we just have to step up now and show. Right, we have to show them what they're capable of. And so when we have our EB data, we'll have something very strong in hand from a well-conducted phase 2 clinical trial. We'll be able to say, this is what we've seen. And we don't know what that's going to be yet, but hopefully the outcomes will be very positive.
We're in a new era of medicine, are we not?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's exciting. It's absolutely exciting, and glad that we can be a part of it. Certainly it's been a long road. It's not been easy getting to where we are, but
I'm sure most people would not even truly understand what that road is. But one thing I look at with this space, there's not a lot of people. Like, you look at all the flower competitors in the cannabis space, but when it comes to cannabinoids and focusing on big pharma, those who do it right, there's a tremendous opportunity when you look at the market size. And there's really not a lot of global competition right now, I find. It's something that is overlooked a lot, but however, something very important is, as I said, we have definitely entered a new era of medicine, right?
Absolutely, and it continues to be kind of the traditional three who are really focused on this space. You got GW, who sold for 7.5 or 7.8 billion to Jazz Pharmaceuticals.
Jazz.
You've got Zynerba, who's moving along with their CBD product, and you got us. And there's a couple others. You could throw Cardiol into the mix. You can throw a few others. But in terms of pure play cannabinoids and rare cannabinoid drug development, we're one of the few. The other guys are all looking at CBD, which is a major cannabinoid, or THC. We're kind of the only guys out there looking at rare cannabinoids. So in that aspect, we're at the forefront. We continue to be the leader, and I think there's exciting times ahead. I mean, when you look at what these things can do, we filed another patent looking at neuroprotection for diseases such as Alzheimer's or Parkinson's. Where we think these drugs can have an effect.
Which is huge.
It's
like
huge.
When you think about how many people are going to be affected by that disease as we look at Canada, North America, even the global population and how it's aging. There hasn't really been a lot of focus on the disease, but some of the stuff that I hear and the progress that's being made, it's staggering to say the least, and how this will be a focal point. And if those that can find, I can't imagine what that would be worth.
It's big. I mean, one drug was approved not that long ago for Alzheimer's, and its net effect is marginal, but yet it's going to be a multi-billion-dollar a year product because there's nothing else, right?
Right.
So let's cross our fingers that cannabinoids can play an important role there as well.
Yeah, I don't want to bore you with the 52-week lows, and I don't want to ask you this question, but I got some good news last week. I was speaking to a couple from New York, and they actually think for the whole biotech industry that we've hit bottom. So I know you're busy doing operations every single day, but do you pay much attention to it?
Well, part of my job, I'm forced to look at our share price at least once a day. It's not something that anyone at the company really, we don't sweat over other than me. Maybe
sure.
our IR guy, Colin, but we're focused on building long-term value. That's only done in an incremental fashion, stepwise. You've got to lay out a meaningful plan, and you got to be able to execute on that. So to be honest, I could ask any one of my direct reports how the share price is doing, and they have no idea because they're too focused on executing their job, and that's going to have the biggest impact. Us sitting around in a room and complaining about the share price isn't going to it's not going to move the needle, right? But executing will, and that's what we're focused on.
Keep up the great work, and appreciate the update.
Great. Thanks, Shad. Great talking to you as always.
Thanks, Eric. Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you giving this video a thumbs up. We also value your feedback, so leave a comment below. And if you like what we do, then share this video on your socials. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and tap on that bell to receive notifications for all future videos that we post. Thanks for watching.